Johnny, it's recorded.
Well, good evening for those in person and online. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone present here to join us by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And with that, I would make a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda with one change, which is before we move to community open forum, we'll be having our student board rep, Jacob Thompson, come up and receive his oath and joining the board as the school year starts. And with that change, can I get a second? Second by Mr. Lloyd. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And with that, we'll ask our student board rep to come forward. Pearl's actually going to administer the oath down there. And while he's coming up, I just want to let everyone know online, if you are interested in addressing the board, we do have a method to do that. If you just want to type a message in the chat in the Zoom meeting, then Mr. Colarupo will let us know that. You need to do that fairly quickly in the next minute or so, just so we have your name. Please list your name and the topic that you'd like to address the board on. And then we have a couple people here in person that we'll address in just a second.
I, Jacob Thompson, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the States of New York, or State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Student Representative for the Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
And a little bit later, as we do our open forum for the board, we'll ask our student board rep just to give us a little background on himself and a little bit about what he might want to look to do this year. So welcome to the board. And with that, I did want to let everyone know, we do have 2 blue cards tonight, so I will read our board policy for public participation. Just a reminder, this is a board meeting in the public, not a public meeting. But we do set aside a time up to 30 minutes for public participation. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And we do just remind that we don't allow any obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice. And the board won't be responding to the topics that are presented tonight. Our policy also states that persons making presentations at a board meeting will address remarks to the president and may direct questions or comments to board members or other district officials only upon approval of the president. Board members and the superintendent shall have the privilege of asking questions of any person who addresses the board. Questions and comments from the public concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and referred to the superintendent for appropriate action. And if the board does decide that a presentation or a topic that's brought up requires a response, we'll do that in writing through the board president after the meeting. So please don't take our lack of response here as anything other than that's our policy, and it prevents us from, frankly, going down a rabbit hole that we haven't warned the public ahead of time that we'd be discussing. So with that, the first blue card we have, do we have any online? All right. So the first blue card that I'd invite to come up to the podium is Mr. James Delladonna. And I believe he will be speaking on behalf of the budget, or about the budget. And as Mr. Delladonna is getting to the microphone, we'll just make sure that it's on so that everyone online can hear. And Mr. Delladonna, when there's about 30 seconds left, I'll just kind of give you a signal so you know. And
Can you hear me?
yes, thank you.
Okay, great. My name is James Delladonna. I live in Brewerton, and I'm probably here tonight representing 10 taxpayers, parents of students. And why I'm coming here tonight is because I addressed a letter on May 25th to the superintendent, along with a couple of copies to the members of the board, Mr. Andrews, and it was discussing the 2019-2020 budget and what we see as savings that should have been appropriated to the taxpayer, either a credit in the 2020 tax or a refund to the taxpayers. and I identified some areas to generate. We talked about teachers' aides and non-other essential personnel who were furloughed, the cost from the school buses not being used with the fuel and the usage, maintenance and repair costs of the buses, utility reductions since buildings were closed, electric, gas, propane, water, all of that savings, general cleaning supplies, paper towels, toilet tissues, face tissues, etc., for the men's rooms, ladies' rooms that were not being used, supplies normally for the athletic fields, that since there was no spring sports, money saved since there was no spring sports, the extra monies that are usually paid to teachers and people who are coaches, you didn't spend that money, that should have been all money saved. So I identified a whole bunch of these savings. I spoke to the superintendent, he called me on the phone, which I thought was fantastic, and we talked. And, he was explaining this and that about the buses. We only pay for 10% of the buses, 90% paid by the state. And the president said no furlough is being done. And, I sort of bought into it. And then when I got off the phone, I said, boy, he smooth talked me into really a con job, in my opinion. For example, when he talked about furloughs, nobody got furloughed, according to the president. But there was a PPP program. That money came from the federal government. So that savings that the budget didn't spend on, that should be savings from the budget. Then we talked about the buses. Well, since 10% is the school's portion, the buses didn't run. Where's that 10% savings? And so on and so forth. So we'd like to know, when I say we, taxpayers, we'd like to know why there is no savings. Where is the savings and why wasn't there a credit to the taxpayers on the 2020-21 budget? And why, or a rebate. So we haven't heard anything on that. I sent the letter then on the 22nd of August, very quickly addressing the fact, I said, here we go again. Only this time the budget is a full budget, more than it was last year, a full budget to open schools 5 days a week for at least 7 or more hours a day. Schools are not opening, you're not going to open the high school, you're not going to open the junior high school. Well, there should be some savings there. But again, don't see nothing being said about that, okay? Again,
About 30
like I
seconds
said,
left.
huh?
About 30 seconds.
Okay, good. I said, about the school board, I look for the school board, we taxpayers look for the school board to be a check on the administration, where they spend the money, how they spend the money, make sure the kids are getting their education. The superintendent, the administration is responsible for the kids, okay? The union takes care of the teachers. So we'd like to know, see the board take care of the taxpayers, where's the rebate, whatnot. Finally, I think it should be normal procedure, SOP, standard operating procedure. When you send out the notice with the amount that the budget's going to be, send out also with that the accounting of where the previous year's budget was spent by item.
Thank you for your comments. Good news is there's a great presentation later in our meeting tonight by our business manager. We'll be talking about the budget at length, and we'll certainly be addressing some of the areas that not just the public, but frankly the board deals with when it comes to our governor and both the federal and state rules around budgeting. So appreciate the comments. And with that, our next and final speaker is Lynn Dowler, representing CSTA. I'll invite her up to the microphone.
I would like to thank the board for allowing me to speak this evening. I am Lynn Dowler, and I am the president of the Central Square Teachers Association. During this unprecedented time, every member of our school community, including administrators, board members, teachers, teaching assistants, support staff, and countless others, have had to step up to face new and what often seems like insurmountable challenges. Everyone is under pressure in so many different ways, and everyone has concerns with performing their jobs to the best of their abilities. It doesn't matter if you are a bus driver, an administrator, a counselor, or a teacher. As a result of this pandemic, everyone is attempting to juggle multiple stressors at home combined with new stressors at school. The need for all staff members from the top down to promote and display a level of empathy and respect of all employees and students in our school district is paramount to facing the current and upcoming challenges. What we don't need now is for teachers' feelings and concerns to be dismissed, be told their concerns are not valid or as important as others. This does not promote the school climate we desperately need right now. Having said that, there are certain traits that are paramount to being a successful teacher. Patience. And our teachers need to be shown patience. Empathy. And our teachers need to be shown empathy. Kindness. And our teachers need to be shown kindness. If our learning community is to reach its greatest potential, I must demand that people at all levels are treated with respect.
Thank you for your comments. Sorry about that. Thank you for your comments. And with that, that closes our community open forum. We'll move into our agenda. Can I get a motion to accept item D, personnel, instructional, and non-instructional? Motion by Mrs. Wood, second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion on item D? Being none, all those in favor? Thank you, it's unanimous. I get a motion to accept item E, the consent agenda in its entirety? Motion. Motion by Mr. White, second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion on item E? All those in favor? Motion passes, and with that, I'll just call out, the board will send a letter, and Pearl, if you can make this happen, I'll be happy to sign it. But on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Irene Daly and Kalina Lewis for the donation of 100 cloth face masks to the district. Very much appreciated. All right, moving into special presentations to the board. Turn it over to Mr. Colabufo for the continued conversation just regarding reopening plans, and not just around the regular school day, but all the topics around it.
Yes. I first want to say, again, going back to the reopening plan, that I've had, I was able to have conversations with the different units. I was able to go to the transportation garage. They're only able to get about 20 bus drivers in at a time, so we're having 5 sessions there. So in that opportunity, I was able to talk to them, and we had some really serious conversations, because the rumors that were floating around that unlike the first closure, we were not able to lay people off in furlough directly from the governor. But we weren't able to do that. So with this situation right here, we could be faced with some options. If the governor again says that you cannot lay people off and you have to pay their benefits, then that's out of our hands. If he says it is an option, we have to look at the fact that we've already made up $2 million part of the hit of the governor saying 20%. And that's so important that everybody understands, because it doesn't seem to be getting the media that it really should get. So the Office of Labor, Division of Labor, has already given us 3 allocations, which when we get all the allocations, that's roughly $56 million in state aid of an $81 million budget. Right now, we're only getting 80% of what we would normally get is 100%, which you're going to see more of this when Maureen Ladd, our business manager, gives the budget presentation, because we could very well be staring at another 6, 7, possibly even $8 million more that we would have to make up. So what we're going to have to figure out is, A, the governor says no furloughing, because again, we're not part of the PPE of the private sector. If we can't furlough, then we're going to have to cut programs to come up with that amount of money. If we can, that's something that we're going to have to look at. And I was very honest with certain units that it could very well not look like it did in the spring. And in fact, there would be layoffs, and there wouldn't be furloughs, there would be no benefits, because then that walks the gray area of something called the gift of public funds. So if people are shut down and the governor isn't forcing us to make everybody whole, then we would then have to look at that and say we would likely then have to make straight layoffs. So I had those difficult conversations with people at bus garage, because I don't have a practice of hiding things. I want to be completely open that is something that is on the table. I'm hoping that we don't have a massive shutdown like we did before. I think the plan that we put out with 10 or 12 kids in each classroom following the guidelines, the governor's 145-page plan, and we don't have anybody in the high school and the middle school. And I just want to take a second because, believe it or not, I've taken 1,500 phone calls from parents wanting to know why we're not having people at the secondary level. I just wanted, for the record, one more time say, at the high school and at the middle school, we've got about a little over 97% of the parents want their kids to be in school all the time. We also have the 10 or 12 classroom rule. So the building's a little bit older. There are some classrooms that can only accommodate 10 kids. Some classrooms can accommodate 12. So when you look at that and you look at the fact that we have about 97% of the parents that want their kids to come in, we would be able to get every high school child and student in each one out of a 5-day cycle. But that would mean that the teachers would be teaching 5 full days to be able to accommodate that. Well, we also have things of teachers' contracts that basically said they start at this time, they end at that time. It's contract. So when would they have the opportunity at the high school level to meet the 990-hour requirement? That's another thing that it's really important the community understands, is we got no waiver on that last year. So even though the high school, none of our schools were actually operating with kids in them, our teachers were still providing distance learning at the elementary level, the 900 hours, and at the secondary level, that's the middle school and the high school, they had to fulfill the 990 hours, which then fits into an Excel spreadsheet from the state, and then it lights up green. Erin can speak more about that because I kind of put her in charge of that Excel spreadsheet, and when it lights up green that you fulfilled that. You have to, they're very meticulous. You have to take out passing times at the middle school and high school. You have to take out lunches. At the elementary, you have to take out lunches, you have to take out recess, and it has to fit in there. So where the general public can look at this last year and think there's nobody in the buildings, our teachers are still working extremely hard. We still have to meet those requirements as those were not waived. So now here we are, starting the school year off fully remote at the high school, and for the most part of the middle school. On Wednesday, there's going to be about 100 students. We have our high needs special education students. We'll still be receiving 5 days. Hats off to Dr. Collins and her team for figuring all of that out with all IEP changes and the start times and BOCE start times, which means every time that changes, you have to change the IEPs. So I can say right now, and I feel like I almost want to get a blue card and come up. Lynn did a great job supporting the teachers, and I think that's great. I can't think of an administrator that had a full day off, like an actual day off for their families. As again, they're entitled to have vacation time. Really didn't happen. So we've been working 15, 16-hour days trying to figure this all out. So with all of that being said, I just want to say I had those difficult conversations with different units, and I got to tell you, I have a profound respect for the unit heads. When Connie and myself spoke to the head of the monitors and the head of the teaching assistants, and we said, your job's going to look a little bit different. You're going to be riding the buses, you're going to be wearing masks, you're going to have gloves, you're going to step out at every bus stop and take a temperature of every child because they can't have a 100-degree temperature on the bus. And not one of them said, no, that's beyond what our job is. They said, that's job security. We'll do whatever it takes because we value having a job. So to me, that's huge. Lynn Dowler hit the nail on the head. Everybody's job is different right now. And I don't want to forget because everybody is represented by a different unit. And Lynn was right, and Mr. Deladano was right, that the board has a responsibility, for the community as well. So when we're looking at all the changes and all the things that have to be put in place, we're all held to a high standard and accountability because, and anybody, this board can say this, and any board right now can say this because for the most part, this board works in the private sector. In the private sector, there were massive layoffs, and the little bit difference there is the whole PPP and whatnot that unfortunately doesn't apply to school districts, but the private sector took a whack. The revenues were hit. People were laid off. And I want the community at large to understand that we are aware of that. That is one of the reasons why we have a new learning management platform, is because we got 900 responses from parents that I shared with the administration. I also shared with the CSDA leadership that were demanding one platform. Not 40 different apps or Google Classroom or Schoology, because parents were working extremely hard because in their world, not only were they taking care of their family responsibilities, but then they would come home and they had so many different learning platforms, so many different codes, passwords, and to whatnot. And we took those phone calls, and they were frustrated. So now we have one. So I say this because I want the parents to please understand that our teachers worked very hard. They came in, they each received 3 hours of training. They said you only need 1 hour of training for this, but we wanted to get more. But I wanted the parents to know it's going to be a marathon. It's not going to be a sprint. Anybody would be hard-pressed to think that there's going to be full-on in-person learning for everybody at some point in this year. Without thinking, looking at the things that the governor has already done, the likelihood that there's going to be, to some degree, of hybrid distance learning. Everyone talks about a second wave and shutdown and all these possibilities, but we're prepared if what happened last year happens again. I just want the parents to be patient and understand that the teachers are learning a new learning management platform. Arena, head of technology, and her workers are doing a phenomenal job, really trying to get teachers, fully up to speed with this, but it's going to be a process because teachers have the normal worries. Everybody does. I taught for 10 years. You have that feeling in your gut starting the school year, and I get it, that they also right now are having a learning management platform. It's new to them, but I'm also convinced that our staff members walk the talk. If you look at the attributes of such a square learner, problem solving, determination, teamwork, I truly feel that we will get there. So right off the bat, with a new learning management platform, there's going to be a learning curve. But I can tell you right now, I'm not going to throw other districts under the bus. I will not name other districts. But there's a lot of districts out there in neighboring counties that the teachers don't even have a roster right now. They don't know who's in their classroom. They don't know what the IEPs are. And the kids are going to be emptying into their high schools, middle schools, elementaries tomorrow. So I only say this because I am very proud of what the administrators have been able to do. I'm not calling it a vacation. Nobody had a vacation. So the reopening plan, I put a lot of information out. Besides the thousands of phone calls, we put information out that talked about 4 factors. And I just want to end that with the 4 factors quickly. The first factor that impacted our reopening plan were the 145 pages from the governor. And I say governor and not state education department because anything that comes with money behind it is 100% the governor's office. If it doesn't have money behind it, then it's the state education department. So let's just say what it is. I also want to address this confusion because I do take phone calls and parents are calling me a hypocrite for allowing soccer to take place where kids could bang into each other. If they want to wear a mask, they can. If they don't want to wear a mask, they don't have to, which is true. The state came out with that guidance. But then yet in PE classes, kids have to be 12 feet apart. And we can't have anybody in the high school because so many parents want to have their kids come in, and unfortunately we can only have 10 or 12 kids. So they want to know, how is it possible to have those sports? And I will say this for the record. Those were not my rules. So sometimes I feel like I'm the waiter in a restaurant. I didn't make the food. My administrators didn't make the food. The board didn't make the food. To an extent, Governor Cuomo is making the food, and all I can do is say to the people, we'll try better, we'll try harder, and communicate more, but we're not making that food. But yet, we want to be responsive and respectful to the parents, and they've come up with a number of ideas to privatizing the district and making it kind of like Manlius Pebble Hill, that we don't have to listen to the governor. We also would have to then have about $100,000 to charge each kid to come to school and probably start out with $600 million for the schools. But I listen. I don't downplay any of the things that the parents have. There is no con job. There is me laying out there what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And we take it pretty personal because we're trying our best, given the restrictions and the 145 pages that we have, and giving the budget that we have, and knowing that the teachers and everybody, clerical, everybody's working really hard. All I can say is that 145 pages, that was factor 1. Factor 2, as I had just said, that's the fact that in Central Square, for whatever reason, at the elementary, we've got about just shy of 1,600 elementary students. We've got about 240, which is about 90% that want to have, they want to keep their kid, 90% want to send their kids to school. About 10% now want distance learning only. And that gets leveled off by about 97.4% at the secondary level that want to send their kids. That's a lot. That's a lot of parents that want to send their kids compared to other districts, especially in Onondaga County. So why am I saying that? Well, for some districts, they kind of did the district a little bit of a favor. The parents basically said, 40%, we want to keep the kids home. It was a lot easier to get those kids more in-person time. They were able to shuffle and be able to do that. The third factor was the whole 900 required minutes at the elementary, 990 at the middle school and high school. That's still required. They're not waiving that. And that's what the teachers worked very hard over the last closure, is connecting with the students to do that. And then the fourth factor is the busing. We're only allowed to have 22 kids on the bus now. We're not allowed to have 64 elementary kids, which is the same as roughly 47 middle school or high school kids, because they're bigger. So we're taking all of those four factors, and that's the plan that we came up with. I said if the governor lessens his restrictions, then we will be able to lessen our restrictions, and it'll follow suit. A perfect example of that, sports. I said if they allowed sports, we'd allow sports. If they allow marching band and all the other things to take place in the fall, we would allow that. Because we also understand that that window of opportunity for kids to take part in extracurricular activities is closing. I'm staring at a student right here who's a senior this year, who I want to be able to have all those opportunities. With that being said, we had to vote. I know now that she's got a little information, the sports vote is changing a little bit, but at Central Square, what we voted, when I say we, it's a three-person vote. Myself, Jim Dranzak, athletic director, and our high school principal, we voted to not delay sports. We wanted those sports that weren't considered high risk, which are all the ones except for football, cheerleading, and volleyball. I didn't make up that high risk stuff. Again, that came from the governor. All those would be able to start on September 21st, and then the other ones would start following, at that time when we voted, it was January 1. Now I'm going to change to that, because if they started on the 21st, they wouldn't be able to have contests. I played 3 varsity sports. I don't know what it would be like if I could just practice and not have the opportunity to actually compete. So that's sports. We're not having any additional restrictions. Masks. When students are 6 feet apart, they can take the masks off. Anytime teachers are going to say, okay, we're going to come around, we're going to assess the students, that means that I'm going to be in your 6-foot area, we need you to put the masks on. Masks have to be worn on the buses at all times because people will be boarding and whatnot. There were too many variables. Out of the 1,500, and I say 1,500, that was about 4 weeks ago, so I'm well over 2,000 phone calls. All but 2 had said those masks better be able to come off, because that's an additional thing that you would have in place. So just like all of us sitting here right now have that opportunity, Ryan McMahon, the county executive, on a dog, he takes them off, and Andrew Cuomo takes them off when he has his press conference when they're 6 feet apart. Our audience right there know that they have the right to take them off. It's very difficult to keep it on, especially when you have a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old. So I'm hearing right now from some districts where they were on, and I'm hearing from some teachers there was a little bit of a struggle, and it was difficult. They kind of increased some more mask breaks and whatnot. But again, I say this because we're not adding an additional restriction. So I just want, that basically is our plan. We're excited. Each of the administrators will be at different locations. I will be at AA Cole tomorrow and Friday, greeting kids as they come in. If we're able to have more students come in because they get rid of that 6-foot rule, then we'll do that. Because at Central Square, we're not having any additional restrictions, that have been put in place. And regarding the masks, if you read on Syracuse.com, one of the articles they quoted me as saying that yes, we're allowed to take them off. A specialist from Gelisano Children's Hospital who deals specifically with contagious diseases, specializing in children, said they agree that students should be able to take the masks off. We are screening kids. They are getting their temperatures taken. We're doing everything that they've asked us to do, and we want to keep our teachers safe. We want to be able to, all of that, but we also have to have a realistic expectation of really little kids keeping masks on for prolonged periods of time. So we're excited to get started. I hope that the governor sees our numbers are phenomenal in our area, and that we can start moving in that direction and not have to worry about possible layoffs and other things with a massive shutdown.
So I know we're going to move into sports and other activities, but I'll ask the boards, whatever, just put up with this for a second. So just recapping, Tom, tell me if I missed anything, but between the governor and state ed, so they've mandated the time required, they've mandated the distance that our students need to maintain in the school, they have to approve the method of our delivery, they mandated free food for all, both breakfast and lunch for all students coming in.
Until December 31st.
They mandated PPE, they mandated more stringent cleaning regimens, not saying whether or not that's not worthy, but they mandated it. All at the same time, even before it's approved. We had an approved budget in the state, and they have withheld 20% of the money that all these plans were built on us having.
Not only did they withhold, but they backed out $1 million, roughly $1 million of our foundation aid, and they're calling that the pandemic adjustment aid, and that we have to apply for that. So when people are like, oh, but you're going to be good, they're going to be giving you $1 million extra. No, they backed out $1 million. We had to apply to get that. And again, this board is a great board that understands, and they're unified in the fact that the governor keeps giving us more unfunded mandates. Here's a requirement, but you're not getting any money for it. We're not getting any money for PPE. So those $9,000 Clorox 360 machines and the 5 things for the bus that spray down the things, that's all coming out of our budget. So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've had to spend just so we can function. The fist pump where it takes your temperatures, and there's one right there. All of these things the government didn't say, we're going to give you, when I say the governor didn't give us any of that additional money.
Yeah. Just 2 other quick points, which is one, it's been stated several times around the board's responsibility to taxpayers, and I just want to remind everyone, that is not our sole responsibility. It is one of our responsibilities. We are primarily responsible to adopt and execute the educational plan and the curriculum for the entire district, and that doesn't stop just because of everything that's going on right now. So just like everything else, I work for a $15 billion organization, and everything in our company is more expensive right now. Supply chains are challenged, logistics are challenged, and that makes the end product more expensive. Education, no matter how we look at it, is no different. There is an end product, which is an education. It takes people and product and curriculum to do that, and none of that cost, quite frankly, has gone away. In fact, a lot has been heaped on. So while I wish there was a different answer, my honest belief is that taxpayers can expect a rougher go for the next several years. There is no relief in sight. In fact, if anything, it's going to get much tougher. And the only other thing I'd say is I too echo the comments of the speakers and our administration tonight that I think all of our staff, our admins, and the teachers have done incredibly well in trying times. Everyone's under pressure. I'm a parent as well as a board member. I think we're all feeling the stress of figuring this new world out. But I didn't have to build the plan, right? We got to, frankly, sit back for most of it and watch and kind of weigh in and approve the plan that was built. But I would stand it up against any district in New York State, and I feel really great about it. So with that, I think we can move on to the sports and other activities.
So again, with the sports, we just talked about unfunded mandates. So again, there's a lot of criteria that come with that. So every kid, we're hearing if sports actually does roll on 21st, they're allowed to have 2 people come. Again, the temperature checks, all of those things that normally we would not have had to have a staff member go and do, we have to now have a staff member go and do. And again, this is after contractual hours. So it's really trying to figure all of this out and knowing that we're probably going to have to cut another $7 million. So there's a waiting game going right now. Governor's saying, well, if we get bailed out, then we get bailed out, and that's what's probably going to happen. But the bottom line is, the Division of Labor have already started making those cuts. So regarding sports, I want to be very open and clear just in case. So the vote, I just want to touch upon that for a second. It's not binding. So Section 3, John Rathburn has been very proactive. He leads Section 3, and I actually sit on that committee as one of the superintendents. And everybody wanted to be able to have students, to be able to participate and whatnot. So there were three scenarios. One scenario was to move forward as with what the governor said, and that we could start all sports. That includes the high-risk sports of football, volleyball, and cheerleading. When I say this, anybody watching this, I didn't deem those high risk. Again, this is coming from the governor. So, bottom line right there is they would all start, except those high risk ones would not be able to compete. That's choice one. Choice two would be that we would move forward with all of the non-high risk ones, so everything that excludes football, volleyball, and cheerleading, and that the other ones were pushed to January 1. That may now have changed to March. That's something that developed literally as our meeting tonight had started. I'll get more information tomorrow. And so that way they would be able to compete and whatnot is the goal. And then the third one was to delay everything until after January 1. I have been very clear all along as the superintendent of this district to say we are not adding any additional restrictions that the governor's already imposed. So we did not pick number 3 because that would be not having kids start that could start and participate. We went with 2 because we wanted those kids to be able to participate in games, everybody. And Jim and myself, again, we care about what the community thinks. We actually had a phone conversation with the sports booster president, and he was 100% agreement that number 2 made the most sense. The football players should be able to compete, have games and whatnot, but there was also a safety issue because all sports have to have 10 practices before you compete. Football had to have 12. I coach varsity football. A lot of that is hitting and taking hits. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to make contact in the practices. So if all of a sudden we went with number 1 and the governor, in his infinite wisdom, said, all right, there's 2 weeks left in the season, you can play 2 games. There is no way that Jim Dranzak would feel comfortable leading our athletics, nor would I as the superintendent, that these students have not hit each other, have not had any contact, and we're putting them into that situation. Plus, we're hearing that the chance of them actually having games in the fall is highly unlikely. So they would be practicing and practicing and practicing, doing agility drills and whatnot. How many sprints can you do that the kids would be frustrated that they're not having any games? So that is why we went with number 2. If the decision comes down and Section 3 says, well, there's 105 districts in Section 3, and they say they're going to go with 3 and they're going to delay, I just publicly want everybody in our community, I owe nothing to the other communities, I owe everything to this community, so I wanted you to know our decision was to start the people immediately that can actually compete, push back a little bit for the high-risk sports, football, volleyball, and cheerleading, so that they would be able to compete following. And what does that look like? I want parents to know. Normally there's like a 4-month season. They would break that up into, Jim, was it 8-week seasons?
I believe so.
So if there was a football player that also played lacrosse, those 2 seasons would not mix. So that football player would still be able to practice and play football games, and then be able to compete in their spring sport, whether it's baseball or lacrosse, or for the girl sports as well, softball and whatnot. So I wanted to be very clear with that. That's sports. Well, in this district, we don't just believe in sports. We have an amazing fine arts program. Is Ron Haltman here still? No? We have an amazing fine arts program. So the conversation started being, well, if they can have sports, then we should be able to have marching band. Because that would be wrong. If you're having athletes, but you're not having, our musicians, our talented musicians playing as well. So right now, there's about 9 superintendents that was on a Google Meet today from our county and Onondaga County, and looking at that. Ron Haldeman already got me Field Band 2020. I know that he's already had a Zoom, and there were a lot of our talented students that participate in this. We're excited because it's something for them, especially those seniors that they waited so long. And again, we don't know if the governor is going to eventually say, you know what, everything's been great, okay, let's go full on. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening. That's why we doubled down with our distance learning, our learning management system. But I just want everybody out there to know we are working very hard for sports. We are also working hard for extracurriculars and for band. Our clubs, because that's a huge level of engagement, whether it's the change, whether it's student government. I will be meeting with Jen Petrie, is the new student government rep, and she wants to have like 5 different homecomings. and space out with under 50 kids and allow them to do that. Teachers can put things, students can see that. We want to be able to do everything that we can do, that we're allowed to do, so that these students will have meaningful memories and without just saying, well, you know, we got through the pandemic. So a lot of things were thrown at us in the winter and the spring, and I am heartbroken. There were a lot of students that thanked us. We had a 9.5-hour graduation ceremony. The loop of that song is still playing in my head, and I'm sure board members. But our board members were there, 9.5 hours. When you're really, from beginning to end of the preparing and wrapping up, it's probably just shy of 11 hours that we were all there. And a lot of the parents were extremely grateful that we were able to have memories like that. We want to have more things like that. Kristen Enright and Matt Penrod. Kristen Enright's principal of the high school, Penrod's at the middle school. They want to have things where, when we feel that it's safe, that we can bust more students in to do some really cool activities with the students. You can't really do small motor parts in our classes, distance learning. So we want to find those opportunities to be able to have students come in and really have those benefits. With that being said, our technology teachers, even though a lot's online, they created like 600 kits that would go home with the students and whatnot. So a lot of things are happening. We're excited for the start of the school year, and we're just prepared to be able to pivot and go either way. Full back in, or, God forbid, full-on distance learning.
Any questions from the board?
I've got a comment. Two words have been used a lot tonight by these two individuals up here. It's the governor. And I think that needs to be stressed. I can't stress it enough. I'm just a board member here. But the fact of the matter is that he is an individual. He's been given an immense amount of power. And it is that individual that a lot of these aggressions, a lot of these questions, a lot of these concerns, a lot of these issues need to be directed directly toward. We have been given a stringent set of rules and guidelines, 145 pages if I'm not mistaken, maybe more by now, I'm not sure what the total is. And these, Mr. Calabuco, the admin, the teachers, a lot of people that have done an amazing amount of work to get to where we are right today. With that one man, one individual, creating a hell of a lot of resistance to success. So, my personal opinion is, if you want to vent and you want to make a difference, that's where the difference needs to be made. Because there's not a whole lot that we can do at this level to fix this chaos. We're managing with what has been given to us, and we're doing the best we can. And we will continue to do the best we can, and if anybody's got any great ideas out there that we can maybe, carry forward and implement, feel free, we're all ears. But the point is that there's two words that need to be taken off. The government.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any other comments or questions? All right, we'll turn it over to Maureen now for the budget presentation.
I wanted to just talk a little bit tonight about the budget, just have to start a discussion because it's so different this year and what's going on is going to be huge. Our fiscal years run July 1st to June 30th. So in August, end of August, the auditors were in, so I have a good idea of where we're going to be with our closing for the year that we're ending right now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this year and in the context of closing the year that we're just leaving. So our revenue package, our state aid package that we're living in the budget that we're in now, looks like this. This was the executive run that came in March. It always is different than the first one. And remember, there was some take-backs in there. The community aid was taken back. The foundation aid was put back to last year's levels. So these three aids, we've got the foundation aid, we've got the expense-driven aids, which all of those are estimates. Basically, we never know what they're gonna be until you close the year and you get into the next year, then those aids are driven by what you spend. And then there's a small pupil-driven aids that are basically an allotted amount of money for the amount of students you have in the district. So these three amounts are our aid package for the budget that we're in, just a little over 48 million. Knowing this in April and May, as the budget moved forward, and we knew we were coming into the crisis, you can move forward, Carl. We didn't use this 48.1 million. Oh, I want to talk about the pandemic adjustment first. In that package, there's two lines that is called pandemic adjustment, and at the time, the number was 953,913,000. And then at the bottom, there's the CARES Act, which is the federal stimulus money. So what they did inside of our budget package is they basically took out the 953 and then added back the CARES money, the 953. So at this point, as you hear about the federal stimulus money, the CARES money, and what it can be used for, we're jumping through hoops right now to get our CARES Act money and deciding what we can use it for, but it's not new money. It was already taken out of our budget. So I think as it's being talked about now, it's almost like it implies that it's new money coming in to help us. But it's money that was already taken out of the number that's there for us.
So Maureen, sorry, I just want to recap that again to make it crystal clear. So there was, we'll just round up to $1 million. There was $1 million that was already promised to us as a district in our aid. We got additional money from the federal government, the state did. Our allocation was another $1 million. So they took away the $1 million that had already been promised, put that in and said, oh, we'll call it even. So we got nothing by the additional money from the federal government.
Basically, what the state government did, knowing that there was going to be a stimulus package, was took the allotted amount of money per each district, because it was they used your title allotments to get your possible monies, and they backed it out of our aid package.
But they didn't take what you use it for, correct?
They tried to keep it broad, and one of the things they did is they said that it could be used to keep people that you currently have employed. So that is where obviously we're using it. We're just saving positions or not eliminating positions.
So they're not handcuffing you as much as...
Not as bad as some grants are, but it's definitely not flowing to us, without having all the strings attached.
Maureen, the money that they took out of the budget, the 953 that they took out, that was foundation aid, you said?
Yeah.
So does
Well,
that have more or less or equal restrictions on it?
Oh, more. Foundation aid flows. That's your operating budget aid.
Right, so I'm saying the foundation aid has less restrictions.
Right. If you go back to the first slide, essentially the 32 million and change, underneath it, it said CARES Act, and it added 93,000, and underneath that it said pandemic adjustment, and it took back the 93,000.
Yeah, so Christie's point,
Yeah.
if they never did that, we could have used that money in a lot more ways,
Yeah.
and now they pulled it back. and
That
they're
number
saying-
would have been bigger on the top.
So essentially they took a piece of the pie out and they said, the only way you can have this piece of
Right.
the pie that you were already promised
Is to go over here to get it. Yeah, they moved the cheese.
Yeah, Maureen, because I've probably spent, within my job, probably $1 million of CARES Act money that was given to my agency. And it was specifically, right, to deal with the pandemic. So all the things that Tom has talked about, right, all the extras that have had to be bought, that's what the CARES Act was for, right? And it is restrictive, but it within it, right, and I've had to follow the rules, it's to pay for dealing with the hits that you've had to take or the changes that you've had to make for the pandemic. So it's why I asked Tom, and I sent the questions about, because this is a fundamental thing here that has happened to the school system and to the community at large, because if you don't have the ability to buy the monitors, buy the cleaning stuff, buy the masks, all the things that are going to be required to keep people safe and to deal with this, and then have to take it out of high, it's just...
Well, Steve, you're 100% right. So basically what he said was, in March 16, we shut down. Governor said, you got to make everybody whole. You got to keep paying them. You can't lay them off. You don't get the PPE money or PPP that companies get. deal with it, figure it out. Oh, and by the way, in the middle school and high school, you have 990 hours, the elementary, you have 900. There you go.
And not to be the bearer of bad news, but I probably spent a half hour and 45 minutes with Senator Schumer's representative for Central New York today. There isn't going to be another stimulus package coming. It is deadlocked. There will not, the two sides are not going to bail out the states and local governments. So it just isn't going to happen. And the sad part about it is that the number to bail out the school system has already been negotiated. They've already agreed on that amount. It's about $115 billion. It's already been agreed by the Senate, Congress, and the White House. So what you're talking about is the bailout of, so-called of New York State. And it's not gonna happen. So when you get further down this slide, the news is gonna be bad because I could be dead wrong. I could be. It was just his opinion of it. But it's not coming. We're on our own on this.
And that's why I want to talk about it and start talking about it in September, ahead of, as this stuff starts to go through. So go forward, Pearl.
But Maureen, just to piggyback on what Steve just said, I understand the point of the stimulus money, but obviously that should be above and beyond what we were already promised. Because the foundation aid we could have used to buy the pandemic supplies and everything else because there was no restrictions on those. But so instead, it's a big farce. It's just a media stunt because it makes them look like they're helping, but they're not.
Well, I have to piggyback what she said. So it's the exact same thing he did with the community money. So they back out of it. They say, well, you can use your community aid money, but this is how you have to use that community aid money. And then all of a sudden now, that community aid money disappeared. He took that away already as well.
Yeah, so because it's coming around now that all of the governments, whether your districts or counties or whatever, are applying for their CARES Act money, and we know all the different criteria that we can use it for, and a lot of it has to do with the new mandates, it makes everybody feel like it's covering new costs and that it's new money. And it's, for districts, it's definitely not new money. It was already taken out of our packages. So I want to talk about the state aid in the three categories, the foundation aid, the expense-driven aids, and the pupil count aid, and then discuss the 20% reductions that we're discussing. And those numbers over to the right are what they're estimated to be. Obviously, these numbers are estimates, but you can get the idea. If the 20% were to be taken off the foundation aid money, you're looking at $6.5 million. If they're going to take 20% against the expense-driven aids, that would be another $3 million, and there's a small amount in there against the pupil count aids. So 20% of Central Square's district budget is 9.6 million, give or take. I mean, obviously those are rounding estimated numbers. And we knew some of this 5 months ago, obviously, when we were doing our budget work. So we cut back off of our numbers about 1.4 million. And since then, we have done some other cuts, another couple $100,000. So we're closer to an $8 million potential deficit based on what we did before we put our budget up for both.
Maureen, in the foundation aid reduction, are they including the money that they backed out for the CARES Act?
I've got it combined in there as one number.
So
that is our number.
65 or 6.5?
Yes. So what this means is difficult right now because there's discussion everywhere about, will there be a 20% cut? Will it be restored by the federal government? The fight is at the government level that schools are kind of just hanging out here right now. No true action has been taken, and I'll get to that further on. I do want to talk, I set that scenario, go ahead, Pearl. I just also want to talk about fund balance. Fund balance for districts is essentially your retained earnings in a private company's assets minus liabilities. And you've all had training, we've talked about it at length a lot. But fund balance has a lot of rules to it in school districts. There's a lot of reserves that we can have and not have for certain reasons. We have assigned, unassigned, encumbered, appropriated, unappropriated, non-spendable. There's all sorts of different categories of fund balance. And what I want to bring to your attention is this is close of this year that we're going through right now. We definitely have a large unassigned fund balance. And this is going to be coming, and it's just what the gentleman that was here earlier was talking about. We definitely had quite a bit of savings in the year that we just closed because of all the items that just did not occur after March. And our revenues are coming in on or a little over budget. So we're adding 3 million to our fund balance. What I'm putting there in the star and highlighting it is for the board, because at this point, generally, we would be working with the auditors, looking at our reserves, looking at what we want to, have for the future, with what our liabilities in all of those areas are. We would be making recommendations on reserves and going forward. Given the $8 million possible deficit, I would like and ask that we consider, we just leave it there as we hedge our bets going through this year, because we have no idea what's going to happen. But what will happen by leaving it there is, in our accounting, the auditors are going to give us a check or whatever. They're going to say, you have unassigned fund balance that's over the allowable 4% of your budget. So that's the question that the board, if you would consider that.
And what is that going to do to us? You know,
Nothing. Most of the districts in Oswego County get dinged for
No,
that.
I know the answer. I mean,
Oh.
I deal with auditors every day. It's like, oh, big deal, they write you a little
Right,
no.
but it depends on, everybody has a different take on that, and as the district official, if somebody were to think that was horrible, I want everybody to understand why you're doing it and what the point is, which is obviously the $8 million gap that we're looking at in a year that we've already started and that we don't even know what's going to happen. So this is a good portion of that and could potentially keep us whole as we go through to the next year, where we're going to have to, we'll actually know the answers and we're going to have to
And
do
Maureen, I think
some
it's
hard
important
decision-making.
that everybody in the audience understands the governor wrote legislation for himself that he can actually go into school budgets 3 times depending on what he sees with revenue across the state and whack us even more. And the last one is December 31st. So on December 31st, he can come in and he can take even more. So it's not like how it was in the past, and he says, this is what I'm taking. He can come in 3 times. He's already taken some, but he can come in and do it again to us mid-year.
And so these are the items that we have more questions than answers, but that I wanted to make very clear as we stand right now on September 9th. All of those look-back periods, the governor has put into law that they can look back and take the money from us. There's been no action taken. We're in the second look-back period right now. So the legislator, the assembly, is not going out there and saying that they approve these takebacks. So right now, everything is at a standstill. We have no numbers. So we don't know if it's 10%, 20%. Is it on foundation aid? Is it on expense-driven aids? The Division of Budget on August 13th did start withholding 20%. So that's our clue. They took 20% of 3 payments that come in at the end of August. No federal assistance yet has come into play. The Division of the Budget has to transmit a detailed aid to localities, which is all the governments across the state, schools, counties, the like, cities. That aid to localities reduction plan has to go to the legislator by late second quarter of this year. That's where we think maybe we'll get some new numbers to know what we're dealing with. I think they're waiting until after the November elections. I mean, nobody wants to go out there and be the person that says, we're decimating schools, we're decimating counties, cities. So everybody's waiting on the big move. No schools have made any big moves either, because nobody has said you're not getting this money. Who wants to be the first school out there that takes away everything, and then all of a sudden there's a rescue? It's just a big waiting game. So this is not just a Central Square issue. Obviously, it's a state problem for all districts, for all municipalities. Short term, we do have that fund balance. We can work it and hold it to the best of our ability. Long-term, if this is what it's going to look like going forward for years to come, given the financial crisis that we have, these are going to be huge spending reductions. And it's not going to be, what we've been able to do in the past is keep a level of program, just not as much in all of it. But this is going to be a bigger discussion. It's going to be mandated versus non-mandated. There's no other way to go about it. And also we've got the whole factor that Con's been discussing. How does this year go? Are we going to be in school all year? Are we going to use all of our employees all year? Will we be open? Will we be virtual? Will the executive orders tell us what we have to do if we are closed? All of those things are basically in the mix with no answers right now. So I just want to make sure that, number one, everybody understands the kind of gray area that we're sitting in right now. And number two, we'll be closing over the next 2 weeks. The auditors will be here the first week of October. So if you would consider leaving the unappropriated and taking the hit on that, I think that gives us a decent ability to maneuver over the next few months as we decide what's going to happen and or are told what's going to happen. So,
Maureen, on that,
questions?
on that fourth bullet point, division of budget plans to transmit detailed, help me understand that more. You're saying that they're going to transmit a aid to locality reduction plan, but not until the end of 2021?
Yes, that's what they're saying. That second look back period is in December. So basically,
So they're withholding now, but the plan comes the end of 2021?
correct.
Love
They're
it.
withholding right now, but they're not telling us it's permanent. Nobody wants to stand up and say, we're doing this. I mean, and they're not going to be the ones to do it. It's
Should
going to
that
have to
say
be voted
2020?
on. Huh?
Should that say end of the fiscal year 2020?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. It's their 2021 year.
Yes.
But it's the look back period number 2, second quarter. Sorry. Yeah, that is inside their fiscal year 21.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking it's going to be later this fall. And I'm really thinking after elections.
Well, December 31st is his last time to be able to come in and take the whack, so.
Correct.
Well,
And that makes it so hard for
Until he signs an executive order.
everybody.
But this is the thing, is make a decision and own the decision. The confusion that people have in the communities is that, you know, the PPP and all that, you know, comes, I could see how a community member would be frustrated with that. When they're talking, when she's up there saying mandated versus, people need to understand that's UPK, that's kindergarten programs, that's electives in high schools, that's sports, that's band, that's a complete decimation of programming in schools.
Yes.
And for districts, I've said this before, about 10, 15 years ago, the thing was he was trying to get districts to consolidate. And a lot of them did. They took the incentives, the financial incentives, that's 20 years back. But now it's at the point where there's a push for county-wide districts, and it's squeezing people out. I would not be surprised in 15 years if you don't see, you may not see 9 districts within Oswego County. So it's this tightening up on communities and the traditions of the communities and the school districts because they're financially making it impossible to continue.
And we've done well throughout these years with all of that. I mean, but we're lucky that we're large enough that we could follow the declining population, you know, student counts. We've closed 3 buildings, you know, and sold 2 of them. I mean, there's hard choices have been made and implemented already.
So,
It's
and I agree,
tough out there.
Maureen, I just want to make sure everyone understands this, because based on the numbers you just presented, we've done well, we've done a lot over the years to put us in this position,
Yeah.
and it gives us a 1-year window.
Right.
We might have enough to cover 1 year.
Right. Of the unassigned.
Right.
They are starting to pass laws that we can, it sounds ridiculous to me, we can go into our reserves, but we're obviously going to be spending it on things that they weren't reserved for. And then we have 5 years to pay it back with interest to ourselves. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I feel like at least we've got a little bit of a cushion here to see what happens and act appropriately moving forward. But, yeah, it's not going to be good.
Questions, comments?
This is the same governor that was going to send the National Guard up to take our ventilators in Syracuse. It's the same guy that said he's going to work with Bill Gates to redo education. Said he was going to cut it by 20%. You know, he's going to decimate this thing. You know, it's not going to happen.
Right, and then I think too, you'll see all districts will be doing the same things. But right this second, you don't have any districts stepping out there and jumping off the cliff by themselves. Everybody's gonna do it en masse and try to do the same things so that we're still all having similar programs.
Yeah, it's a game, and like I said, you know, a couple months ago, it's a game of chicken. It's holding
Yep.
the school districts as hostages, as a pawn. And what I heard today is that it's not going to work. So either he's got to pay the money, give us our money, like he's supposed to, or there's no help coming. And then
In which case, that's why I want to make sure everybody understands what the numbers are.
It's not going to be good.
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Sorry, just one more rant, and all the while adding more mandates on, right? We already, as a state, have a mandated COVID reporting system, but now schools have to have a separate one because we'd like to get the community outraged enough, you know, because we want to highlight what's going on with your kids separately so that we get them irate, right? It's just infuriating that the governor continues to do this and is touted as the model that we should all aspire to be. Is absolutely, like I said, he mandates, approves, dictates, and then even though the one thing he did right, which was approve a budget, and all of our voters did the other part of that budget, then withholds 20% of it, with no fanfare, by the way. It's just all of a sudden we got payment and there's 20% less than we should have had coming, right? So everyone with a mortgage, imagine your mortgage, what you owing back, all of a sudden going up 20%. And then people pointing at you and saying, like, you put yourself in this position, Steve, you just weren't fiscally responsible with your money. It's just ludicrous, and again, my frustration is with Mike's point, the governor.
I just want, I said something a few weeks ago, I'm gonna say it again. This individual, the governor, has got a motive in mind, and that is to get rid of this. That is to change this, it's to change your students, these students that we're responsible for, and make them better human beings. It's to change this into something that's more fiscally beneficial for him or his state. And essentially that's what it is right now, it's his state. So all of this, and I've used this in other scenarios, all of this can go away. Because this is nothing but a stepping stone, this is nothing but a tool that's being used to desensitize you, taxpayer, to this going away. This becoming a county-wide controlled thing, this becoming a statewide controlled thing. None of the board members sitting here, superintendent virtually talking to you from Albany. All this stuff can happen. And it's up to us to not allow it to happen, because that's how this particular governor, is going to line, I'll say, his pockets, whatever you want to take that to mean, by making this all go away. We can't fix this here. It's got to be fixed over there. And that's where all the people sitting here and all the people sitting out there in virtual land, if you want your kids to stay home 24/7, learn how to read, write, and do math at home, here's your opportunity. But if you don't want that to happen, again, here's your opportunity. Because that's what this is. This is nothing but a tool to desensitize us to that idea.
All right, thank you, Maureen. Yeah, hopefully, I know it doesn't feel good when you present, we're just all irate, but it's not a good presentation. So we'll move into our reports. Really no unfinished business. The Board of Education presentations, we don't have anything scheduled for the next meeting. After that, we do kind of get back into the school year. We will have some presentations coming. But I did want to throw out there, Pearl had sent me an email today, and I want to get the board's whatever weigh in an opinion on this, which is we do have retirees that we haven't been able to recognize and honor, and my suggestion to Pearl was that I thought we should extend an invitation to, for instance, whether it's the next board meeting or the one in October. Certainly understand that they don't want to participate, but I think it would be nice to extend the invitation. And then if not, do something virtual. So any objection from the board to Pearl and myself to extend that invitation to retirees? All right, so Pearl, date, whatever works best based on the calendar, but probably October to give them a little more time to plan. All right, and with that, then we'll move into board reports. I'm going to actually start with our student board rep. I'm going to ask you just to take a couple minutes, Jacob, if you would, and just tell the board and the community a little bit about yourself, your plans for after college, and then certainly understand if you're not ready to tonight, but down the road, we'd love for you to discuss with the board what you'd like to bring to us and how you'd like to do that and what we can do to support you.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a senior this year, and I'm planning on going to college after school. At the moment, I'm still deciding colleges and figuring that all out because there's a lot of colleges. And then for college, I'm planning on going for political science. And I know there's a lot of different ideas of what's a good politician or government member. But I've seen some bad people in those leadership positions and not fighting for the little person, other people like minorities or those groups. And so I want to be able to fight for just people in general instead of what some people say, like lining their pockets or taking large corporation money, because I feel like that takes away from where you're supposed to stand for the people and not for yourself and your money and your greed. For my plan for the board, obviously a lot has changed because of COVID and there's a lot more restrictions, but obviously I created an account on Instagram to reach out to the kids or students more virtually because it'll be a lot harder to do that because of all the restrictions that we have. But I'll reach out more and decide what they want and what they have. There's maybe some ideas for the code of conduct some people have brought up, which I could bring to the board, but obviously I haven't done that yet because this was my first meeting in person. I've joined twice, I believe, with other meetings this year. So that's my whole plan.
Great. Well, welcome to the board. Thanks for accepting doing this position. And I'll simply say, and I mean this with all due respect to politicians, but there's no such thing as a good politician. I believe politicians go into it to be civil servants and end up being politicians. So be a civil servant and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Nice to have you here on the board. Mrs. Fishman, any topics to bring up?
Yeah, I just wanted to give kudos to all of the district staff members and administration that were doing the whole look handout at the elementary schools today. I personally went to the Lake Hole and it was smooth sailing, and I'm sure it was the same at many other districts. It was well planned, and I've heard from some high school middle school parents who did it, I think, last week and or earlier this week, and they said the same thing.
Yep, I would definitely echo that. My daughter is at home getting ready for her first virtual day tomorrow, and again, just kudos. The communication from teachers has been, again, speaking for my daughter, my experience, absolutely phenomenal. I asked her, yesterday and then again today, how are you feeling? Are you ready to go? She has her schedule all lined up. I'll call out Miss Lacey. Absolutely incredible. Send all sorts of links. If you're having trouble getting the account set up, if it gives you an error, do this. Pointing them to the student help desk. Just way above and beyond. And so she is, I'd say, as excited as one can be for a non-traditional first day of school. So.
Let me say this, Andy. So breaking news, so no one thinks I'm a liar when I read those scenarios, because things change by the moment. So this was at 7:30. Football, volleyball, and cheerleading fall seasons have been moved to March 1st, 2021. That just happened.
Great.
It's section 3 or the whole thing?
We'll stay.
Full state.
So March 1st, all right. Open it up to the rest of the board. Any topics or items to bring up? Open forum.
I just want to go back and ask a couple questions about the new canvas that we're using. How proficient do you think our teachers are going to be with 3 hours of training?
They're not going to be experts. I know that. So it's more than 3 hours because then we have staff development days, but we're not expecting them to be experts. Again, I want to back up and say that we put a survey out to parents. Parents were extremely frustrated with learning multiple platforms. So every message that I put out to the staff, the principals have echoed that they're not going to be amazing at this. There's going to be a learning curve. Some are going to be better than others and better at technology, but we're going to support them. As I said, it is not going to be a sprint. This is a marathon, and the bottom line is districts right now, they're using Google Classroom. It's not a learning management system. It almost encourages just the posting of assignments instead of direct instruction. So I shared with CSDA leadership when we got this, the 900 responses, and I welcome anyone, and I shared with board, I want them to be able to go through and see what the parents had written about. It was great that the teachers were able to turn on a dime and do distance learning, but there were a whole lot of issues, given the fact that most assignments were posted, kids were given links to go to YouTube, it was freezing. Those things, we were told, they don't happen within Canvas, it's all encompassing. So if there's a teacher out there that's thinking that we think that they're all experts, I want to be better communicating to them that we're not expecting them to be experts. We're going to continue on Wednesdays, and because there's no students in,
Right.
but we're going to continue to help them because the probability of the governor keeping some form of distance learning going all year long is really high. So right now, Google Classroom is experiencing a lot of issues because their drive has been down, and Google's even said it's going to be intermittent. So for a district that doubled down on Google Classroom, that might not be good because whether it's cyber attacks or whatnot, that's bad. People that use Schoology, we had 30% out of our whole teaching staff that use Schoology, 70% weren't in favor of it. So at the end of the day, there had to be a new platform. To Laura, to answer your question, we're not expecting anybody to be masters at it right now. We're going to be very realistic, and like I said in the letter to the teachers, we're realistic. So we get that it's going to be a learning curve, but we're investing the time in learning something that is the #1 growing distance learning program out there right now in the country. Andy told me that. I had to look it up. It is true. It is Canvas. Syracuse City raves about it. They use it with their 7 through 12. I had a conversation with Jaime Alcé, the superintendent. We needed something. I wish that things were done a little bit. I understand teachers are off in the summer, so we paid them for the 3 hours.
Right.
We invited anybody to have additional more than 3 hours, but we couldn't pay for that. As you just saw the reasons that Maureen had said right there.
Right.
We're going to continue to give that training and whatnot. So hopefully, within a month, people would start to feel a little bit more comfortable utilizing that platform.
Can I just weigh in on that? Because I'm familiar with Canvas, Laura. It had nothing to do with our district choosing Canvas, and I didn't know we were even going down that path until it went, which is fine and appropriate. But I'll simply say, so Canvas is an LMS, but it's not just an education. We actually reviewed it and put it against some competitors in our organization. We have a corporate L&D and a field training team. And hands down, it was the winner both from ease of use, adaptability, and the learning curve. And the reason I want to mention that is because one of the things that we rated it on was the investment of time to learn it. What the district did is twice what we would have allowed in the private sector as far as time on it. Because after that, it's diminishing returns, right? It's got to be hands-on. I mean, you can only sit in the classroom and hear theoretical, here's how you use it so much. You just got to use it. And that, I'm not taking anything away from the teachers. I know it will be a learning curve, but it's a learning curve no matter how you look at it. And I think it's great that they went with that system. And the fact that, for teachers that have done a lot with Google in the past, it's not like you have to learn a whole new thing. You can utilize that and administer it through there, but the student doesn't know it's still Google.
And Lori, what we also did was we understood teachers were frustrated, so all the principals sent an email out yesterday, I believe, that basically says put your Google Meet or Zoom link right in Canvas so they can access it that way as we move forward.
Now, when the parents are here, if they have questions, when they're helping their kid with homework and so on, at night, after school, who do teachers direct them to help them with that?
Do the same thing as if we were using Schoology, Google Classroom, or 100 apps that we use. So there's a help desk, and we're cranking with that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so again, what teachers have said to me, who is the person that sits on, who's a parent that sits on your committee? Tim Newton. Tim sat there at a board, that was a board meeting, right? And he's like, listen, I was on it, Canvas is amazing, the capabilities are great. But it would be the same thing. The good part about it is, the parent's not going to then have to ask a question about Schoology, and then have to ask a question about Google Classroom, Kahoot, Seesaw, and a bunch of other different things. It's one platform, and we go on from there. I want to say this. I want to be able to let the teachers know, the TAs know, the clerical, everybody, that we care about them. We want to have an environment that's great for them. But nobody should be confused that the customer is the student and their families. So when we received 900 responses, and the teachers are great. They wanted to stress that. They were very accommodating. The communication was great. We were always able to get a hold of them during their office hours, whatnot. They always got back to us. They taught our older kids, and they're awesome. But we needed a new platform. We needed one consistent way to go about it. So I want any of the teachers watching this right now to know we're not expecting, it's what we said in the letters to them, we're not expecting them to be rock stars out of the gate with this. There's a learning curve. There's going to be no gotcha moment where our principal's going to go in and say, well, APPR is plugged back in, and what are you doing right there? We're not. We realize that there's a learning curve. And hopefully, in a month or two, people will start to realize that they picked it right up, and we're moving forward for however long this pandemic lasts. You got it.
And just if I could add, I'm sure the teachers understand too, it's a learning curve for the students as well as the parents that might be helping the younger students. So as much as they're going to show understanding to their students, I would expect that they would get that same level of understanding from administration. So
Absolutely.
it'll work.
All right, no other questions? Turn it over to Mr. Colufo. I don't know if you have anything additional for your superintendent's report.
Again, I want to thank everybody. This has been a horrible, terrible time. The principals have taken phone calls. I think it would not be an exaggeration if I said I had taken 2,000 phone calls on my work cell and text messages. And overall, the parents, a lot of them were venting frustrations when I actually was able to say to them that these were the 145 pages of restrictions. When it comes to sports or when it comes to whatnot, that's not me. This is what we're doing. And hopefully, this will be in the rearview mirror sooner than later. So again, I want to thank the new student board member on. It was great hearing about him. I want to thank all of the staff members. Teachers are working very hard, and I know that they probably had that nervousness in their stomach at the elementary level to see the students in person tomorrow. We're going to be at the buildings. Looking forward to see the young ones get on there. I'm excited because we have a secondary, middle school, and high school staff that are very creative. And I know that they're going to engage with those students, have the conversations and whatnot. And the goal, I'm hoping, goes the other way, that we'll be able to have more students in our buildings sooner than later. That's all.
All right. Thank you. With that, I'll let those that are here know and the public online that we're about to make a motion for executive session. Our student board member is not allowed in executive session, sorry. But assuming that we enter in there, we will not be taking action, so we won't come back into this public meeting. So we'll be closing wherever we're about to hold our executive session, but there won't be any decisions. So with that, I would like to make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education hereby move into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, specifically tenure of 3 particular people with no action to follow. Second. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And forward.